You there, can you help me reef this mainsail?
Well, sir, I'm afraid I'm not much use as a sailor.
Well, that's my mistake. I see by your mustache and beard there, I thought you were a crew member that could do some work and help us.
Yes, I haven't been able to shave my mustache since we left Rotterdam. The seas have been too rough to try and shave.
Well, yes, indeed, although that's normal this time of year with the ocean. I've lost a great many friends on the treacherous voyage overseas. I imagine that a landlubber like you is looking forward to seeing dry land again.
I am. I miss those members of my community that I left behind, but I'm ready to live out the remainder of my days in a new land.
What is it that brought you and your community to the New World?
Well,
I know that, I know that there's a curiosity about you folks in Rotterdam, where I understand you were from. Some of the townspeople have come out to watch you folks when you come out on the street. But you might have stayed in Switzerland, I understand. That's where you're really from. Is that not correct?
Not quite. Many members of our community are indeed from Switzerland, but my family background is actually from Thüringen, Germany. Have you heard of it?
I am as unfamiliar with those lands that do not border the sea as you are with the coast.
Thüringen is a beautiful place. The hills are green and the forests are filled with game. But I hear Pennsylvania also has plentiful game and beautiful forest.
I'm only familiar with Philadelphia, but I've heard that the area beyond is a rich country indeed. That's why they call it Penn's Woods.
I hope to have a small farm there and live in peace.
There are many such farms in America. There is land in abundance, but few people to work it.
We have the opposite problem in Europe. Too many people and not enough land to go around.
Indeed, that's why I prefer the sea. Not much privacy on these boats, but the sea and the stars seem to go on forever. I like a good port, though. I gather that you're not a city dweller.
My family has resided in the countryside for many generations. My father, grandfather, and great-grandfather all lived in a small town in Thüringen called Rotterdam. Before that, my great-great-grandfather was a herdsman for the town of Rudolstadt.
I have not heard of those towns, but from what you say of Thüringen, it sounds like a nice place to live. Why did you decide to leave?
My father died at a young age. I have found that I had little interest in following in the footsteps of my ancestors, who were Lutheran ministers in Rotterdam. Instead, I decided to find work where I could. There was not much work to be had in Rotterdam, so I traveled looking for work, working as an itinerant apprentice. Eventually, I was able to find steady employment alongside my stepfather, who was from Switzerland. He taught me how to work with water in mills and in the construction of fish ponds for fish farming. He was a good man.
I gather that he has passed.
I have no family left, only the fellowship of my community and a few sons and daughters from my marriage.
You say that your ancestors were Lutheran ministers. How did you come to be Amish?
For many years, I worked in the Duchy of Zweibrücken, a small Lutheran principality. Have you heard of it?
I have not been there, but I know that it is along the Schwarzbach River.
That's correct. There are many mills and farms along the river's banks. Much of this farmland was destroyed in the 30 Years' War. The Duke of Zweibrücken needed farmers to revive the land and the economy. This was how I ended up working there, alongside of the Amish.
And that is how you grew to learn their ways?
That's correct. After having spent time among them, I learned that they were peaceful and good people who sought to live an authentic Christian life.
I am a Christian as well, Dutch Reformed.
There are many ideas about what it means to lead the proper Christian life, but I found among these people that their ways were not the same of the world. They valued peace and hard work. It was not as I had grown up learning.
What was unique about the Amish? What makes them different from a lot of the other faiths that came out of that area?
Well, for one thing, we embrace the principle of nonviolence. We refuse to engage in war and to hold public office. We would rather peacefully work the land and remain at peace with our neighbors as well.
And did that make it difficult for them from the areas that they came from?
It did. I had learned about the Anabaptists as a young man growing up in Thüringen and in Zweibrücken. I had heard about how they had caused trouble for the dukes there, and thus they were viewed unfavorably by many.
I know that I grew up learning of how they seized the city of Munster, the Anabaptists that is, and violently expelled the people there. But these Dutch Anabaptists that I know of are now peaceful people, as you say.
The way of Christ is that of peace. Unfortunately, there were times that those who acted as leaders in the early Anabaptist movement did not understand that the final victory of Christ was not to be brought about through the sword. Like the Anabaptists who were led by Jan of Leiden, who seized the city of Munster, there were violent Anabaptists in Thuringen as well.
Did they seize the city there as well?
No, Thomas Munster, the leader of these Anabaptists, preached that the end of the world was near. He encouraged the peasants of the countryside to mount an armed rebellion. They were brutally crushed at the Battle of Bad Frankhausen, and Thomas Munster was killed. For many years afterwards, the princes of Thuringen and Saxony remained fearful of another peasant uprising. Martin Luther himself used the tragic events of Bad Frankhausen to try and portray the Anabaptists as dangerous criminals. The persecution, which was there from the beginning of the Anabaptist faith, became even harsher.
But as a Lutheran, you were safe from the persecution.
True, but I was not safe from the charms of the young Amish girl that I fell in love with.
Ah, yes. Many a sailor has given up the sea for the safe home port of a woman.
As I said, I was impressed with the Amish. I liked working alongside them. I was in love with an Amish girl. I had no family. My mother and father were both dead, as well as my stepfather, and I wanted to join their community, but I needed to ask permission first.
From her parents?
Yes, from her parents, but also from the civil authorities of Zweibrücken. I explained in a letter how I had come to value their community and how I wished to marry into it. Although the Lutheran authorities of Zweibrücken were skeptical, they acknowledged my request to join the Amish community. I forfeited my rights as a citizen of Zweibrücken and became part of this pilgrim people.
That must have been difficult.
At times it was, but my home was no longer Thuringen or Zweibrücken. It was and is among this community.
How did you adjust?
As a farmer and a laborer, it was not a very difficult transition. We spoke the same language, although their dialect was a different one than my own.
What made you leave Zweibrücken? Is there not an Amish community still there?
There is. When I joined the Amish church, the civil authorities of Zweibrücken ruled that I would eventually have to leave the duchy. Although they told me this, they did not enforce this ruling. Many Amish and Mennonites are valued by the duchy for their novel farming methods. They need them to help revive the economy and therefore aren't forcing us to leave. However, the duchy also does not grant us much religious freedom. We can only work, not own the land. When we heard about William Penn's noble experiment, we felt as though we might find land of our own where we would be free to practice our faith.
I have heard that is so. Ah, look, there is Delaware Bay.
Let us thank God with a song.